Unfortunate news this Derby week. 2 horses died today after races at Churchill Downs, and this comes less than a week after a Derby contender was euthanized after a workout injury.
WKYT's Chad Hedrick sat down with longtime sportscaster Kenny Rice to talk about the upcoming Derby and the controversy of these racing injuries.
The famous call to post, that is music to any horse racing fan's ears.
When you look up there and you see those twin spires, you go, hey, I'm at the Derby.
The sights, sounds, and excitement that culminate in thousands of people descending into the Bluegrass State. It's an exciting time to be a Kentuckian as the Kentucky Derby is just around the first turn.
You're never going to see anything like this. You're never going to see 160,000 people again at a horse race.
Kenny Rice has covered more than 40 derbies. He's seen it all, including the troubling side of the races when a horse is injured.
It's the toughest thing in the world to cover. I mean, it's the toughest thing.
During 502 Day at Churchill Downs, a horse died after it fell during a race. The 3-year-old filly had to be euthanized on the track. 3 races later, another horse collapsed and died.
These horses are pets to the trainers and the people that are around them, to most of the owners.
PETA released a statement Tuesday calling for Churchill Downs to close and address safety protocols, adding, quote, horses should not be dying for human entertainment.
It's a very fine line in there between the sport and what can happen. And you look at their legs and the spindly legs they have, it's amazing that a 1,100 pound horse can run.
Still, Rice says he believes safety is heavily considered and a priority in the industry.
Nobody can go on with a happy day at all, even if you've done well at the track, if someone else's horse has been injured or the worst situation had to be euthanized.
Chad Hedrick, WKYT.